The overglamping industrial complex would have you believe that you need one of those rear swing-out tire carriers on your Lexus GX460 or any Toyota or Lexus SUV for that matter. Today I'm going to talk about why we don't have one of those swing-out rear tire carriers and why it's not good for your vehicle. Now, you've all seen those rear swing-out tire carriers on the 4Runners or Lexus GX460s, and you might wonder why we don't have one. We prefer the stock OEM location of the spare tire, which of course is underneath of the vehicle. One of the main arguments for getting a swing-out rear tire carrier for your Toyota or Lexus truck or SUV is that it offers easier access in case of a breakdown or flat tire when you're off-road on the trail. Now, while that may sound promising and might theoretically be true, in reality, when you get a flat tire on the trail, you are going to be jacking up the rear of the vehicle or the front of the vehicle no matter what in order to access the tire that has gone flat to change it. What I mean by that is quite simple. Whether your spare tire is down below or on the back, you're going to be down on the ground, in the mud, in the dirt, whether you like it or not, getting that jack under there and jacking up the vehicle. And by the time you've done that, you've made clearance for your OEM mounted spare tire to come down and gain access to it. Now, we've done the measurements on this Lexus GX460. If there is a front flat, you can lower this rear spare tire without jacking up the vehicle. It will clear. If you have a flat on the rear axle on this Lexus GX460, you can still clear the spare tire underneath as long as you don't have a trailer hitch. If you do have a trailer hitch, you will have to jack up the vehicle a little bit to clear the spare tire. However, as I just said, in reality, no matter where your flat occurs on your Toyota truck or SUV, you're going to have to break out the jack and jack up the vehicle regardless, which again means you've just made clearance for your OEM mounted spare tire to come out. So from my perspective, since the vehicle has to be jacked up one way or the other anyway under most circumstances, it's no big deal to simply take that time to slide out the OEM mounted spare tire and get down to business of changing the tire. But there's more benefits to the OEM underside mounted spare tire location than you might realize. And that's why Toyota and Lexus continue to mount it underneath of the vehicle and not up and out on the back. The new Land Cruiser 250 has it underneath. The Land Cruiser 300 GR Sport in the world market has it underneath. The GX 550 and the LX 700H, again, all have the spare tire mounted underneath, just like on this Lexus GX460. Some of the benefits are UV protection. Obviously, since it's not exposed to the elements, it's down under there and it's not getting dry rotted by the sun. This is especially important if you live in a location such as the Southwest or out here in the desert where the UV destroys rubber compound. There can be an argument made for the weight distribution underneath. Since it's tucked up against the body, there's less crap hanging off the back. But in my opinion, the biggest benefits of the OEM location of the spare tire are realized when you recognize the alternative, which is to add one of these aftermarket swing-out tire carriers that, in my opinion, cause more problems than they solve. First and foremost, do realize if you get an aftermarket rear swing-out, it is made out of pig iron that is attached to the rearmost cross member of this ladder frame, and then it is extended out further towards the rear and then has a hinge or some sort of articulating mechanism so the thing can swing in and out. From an engineering and mechanical and physics perspective, that is a lot of crap hanging off the back end of a vehicle that swings out and hangs out even more, that's made out of 1/4-inch plate steel that's thicker than your actual ladder frame itself. One of my gripes with all the overlanding and aftermarket off-road nonsense is they use too much thick of steel. As mentioned, your world's strongest Land Cruiser ladder frame does not use 1/4-inch thick plate steel. But of course, since aftermarket stuff, including skid plates, rock sliders, and swing out tire carriers and front and rear aftermarket bumpers are not designed by actual engineers, they're going to compensate from that lack of engineering oversight by using super strong, triple thick metal. Now, I'm going to be completely honest. Most of the aftermarket off-road stuff is designed by so-called CAD jockeys in computer-aided design. There's no engineer involved, there's no engineer's stamp, and there's no engineer looking it over and going, it looks good. It's designing it in the computer, and they send it out the door and hope for the best. You can see, that shouldn't be like that. And I took the front grate off, and you can see it just sheared itself. I'm pushing on out my foot where it's cracked. And it's pushing the bumper up there. Right, it just can't even support itself. In the case of simple aftermarket designs, such as the skid plates that we have underneath of this vehicle, that's okay. When it comes to other things like rock sliders and front and rear bumpers and tire swing outs, that's where all the problems occur. Our front aftermarket bumper looks cool, but it tore itself apart, and we had to basically re-engineer it and re-weld it ourselves in order to get it to work. You may or may not face similar issues with a rear tire swing out. Now, I know you may have seen a lot of aftermarket bumpers and aftermarket tire swing outs, and nobody's had a problem, and that's all good. However, we actually live off-road, and I'm not making that up. I know people think we're on an off-road over glamping trail behind me, but this is actually our yard. It's where we live, and if we go up in the sky here for a second, you can kind of get an idea of where we live. Now, the point of me telling you that we live off-road is just simply to give context to where I'm coming from. We are on hard-packed, brutal washboards for miles every single day, day in and day out. So the name of the game for us is not how cool it looks or what it's supposed to do, but it really, truly needs to hold up to the daily in and out abuse on our local roads here. In addition, we frequent the trails a lot, where abuse and vibrations and all this carnage happens even more. But if I'm to be honest about where I'm coming from, it's our location. When you're off-road day in and day out on these roads out here, it does more wear and tear than any trail riding that you can imagine. You know, it's not about Black Diamond Trail, lift lockers, light bar, blah, 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 blah. It's literally about your car surviving out here and your tires surviving. Which brings me to the next point that I want to make that's very important. And that is, out of all the nonsense we've done to this Lexus GX 460, we still have the OEM spare tire underneath. That's right, out of all the carnage we've done off-road, we have yet to have a tire fail on us. The reason for this is because we chose good quality tires, BFG KO2s. Everybody knows what they are. And that's the point I want to make here, is if you get high quality tires, your chances of having a tire failure on or off-road are much, much less. We must have 15 tire plugs in these BFG KO2s. These sidewalls are all chipped and scuffed and damaged, and I got goopy compound trying to patch them up. With all that patching and all the rips and carnage in these tires, one has still not failed, simply due to the quality of the tire itself. So the point of that rambling there was the idea of the frequency of when you're going to change your spare tire, I think, is overrated. So the idea of I need to have a convenient spare tire on the back of the window because I'm going to be changing that out, so I need that convenience and access because changing spare tires happens frequently. This car has never seen a day in its life since brand new where it's been on pavement one full day only and never off-road. It lives off-road. The tires are torn up with patches and punctures and scars from off-roading. And still, we've never needed to drop this spare tire. In fact, the last time I dropped it was just to put air in it because it lost its air pressure since it bled off from buying it from the dealer. Now, that's not to say that I'm not going to have to put on this spare tire. It is only a matter of time. Ow! 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 Thus, it's always good to practice good driving off-road and good technique off-road.
Come on, baby.
You don't want to scrape rocks with your sidewalls. You don't want to do that. You want to be mindful of what's going to destroy your tire. And we found in doing that a good quality tire such as a BFG or any tire in that class is going to hold up really, really, really good. So spare tire access on the back is overrated in my opinion. Now, specific to these GX460s, the mother vehicle, the Land Cruiser Prado 150, did have two options, and one did have an OEM rear tire carrier, and that's all good. Some people even go so far as to try to attach a Prado 150 with the rear-mounted tire carrier onto this Lexus GX460, and that's probably the best way to go about it, albeit probably not the most practical or easy way to go about it, and probably not really worth it in the long run. But that would be technically, in my opinion, the best way about putting a tire on the back of your door here. What you don't want to do, again, is put on pig iron on the back of sheet metal. There are tire carriers, as mentioned earlier, that attach to the rearmost cross member here. There are other aftermarket tire carriers that attach somewhere on the sheet metal of your door. And again, it's going to have ridiculous 1/4-inch tank armor steel attached to the whole thing. The thing's going to be made out of a tank. And I'm ranting on this concept of these aftermarket manufacturers with this thick steel attached to this exquisitely engineered sheet metal and how the two don't match. You know, it's like gluing an elephant onto a potato chip. It's all good if it's just mall crawling, but when you're taking these things on harder off-road trails, or like in the case of how we live, you just live off-road and the thing is always going like this and vibrating and shaking down the road whether you like it or not. We don't want 1/2-inch thick battleship armor on sheet metal. Looks cool, but will tear something up when put to actual use. So I realize this can be seen as being the bearer of bad news because the overglamping industry has made this image, this poster child of what a rugged, adventure-y, outdoorsy 4x4 should look like, blah, blah, blah. But before you do add a rear swing out on your truck or SUV, consider that it wasn't engineered to do that. Yes, technically speaking, you can argue that it's more convenient to have the tire back there and just pull it off when you need it. But as mentioned, how often is that really going to happen? And number two, at what expense? Is it really wise to glue an aircraft carrier on the back end of your ladder frame where the metal of the ladder frame is 1/3 of the thickness of the Class 4 destroyer that you're putting on hinges on the back of your light-duty truck or SUV? Yes, light-duty. All Toyota Land Cruisers are light-duty, GX, LX, GX 550, Land Cruiser 250. The only heavy-duty Land Cruiser is the World Market Land Cruiser 7. Adding a bunch of junk to your light-duty truck or SUV is going to raise that gross vehicle weight, and that's a whole nother issue. But if you appreciate the dynamics of your OEM Land Cruiser, you're going to want to keep it as light as possible. The Chinese steel that these aftermarket overlanding companies use on their stuff is as thick as the steel on my tractor back there. Always remember, bigger is not better, better is better. Now I can already hear somebody screaming, that's not why you get a rear tire carrier. You get a rear tire carrier so you can put a bigger tire on the back because it won't fit underneath in the OEM location. And that's a valid point. Indeed, underneath of your GX460 or 4Runner, it's only going to fit so big of a tire. But I will argue that if you've gotten to the point of turning your GX460 or 4Runner into a monster GX460 or mega 4Runner, that you've screwed up so much of the Japanese engineering by pulling off all the Japanese suspension parts and putting on Chinese suspension parts, that you've screwed up so much of the reliability factor that you might as well go out and get a Jeep Wrangler Rubicon. Because a Jeep Rubicon stock out of the box will go anywhere. And at this point, the whole reliability issue of the Jeep, basically being a Chrysler, is now equal to your used to be a Japanese GX460 or 4Runner that's now mostly a Chinese GX460 or 4Runner. Now the whole reliability factors kind of even out here. I know the super cool looking GX460 over here looks cool, but I can assure you it is an absolute mechanical and reliability disaster underneath there. What you don't hear from people that do this sort of extreme stuff is how much stuff is thrown out of whack, how much their alignment is off, how much their ball joints are stressed and breaking, how much their CV axles are splitting, and how much their car is generally unhappy and slowly and constantly self-destructing every time they drive it. That's the truth. They're not going to tell you that. So at that point, get a Jeep Wrangler Rubicon. It's going to equal the reliability of a botched GX460 or 4Runner with made in America, really made in China parts all over it.
In this world, like lots of things, to know at last what we like the most. Women, horses, bay trees, and